All right, let's dive in. We're about to connect a name you definitely know with one you probably don't. And in doing so, we're going to uncover a powerful way of thinking that could honestly change how you see the world. It sounds like a riddle, doesn't it? A tech billionaire, a problem-solving technique, and an ancient perfume ingredient. I know, it sounds random, but by the end of this, you'll see exactly how they're connected, and more importantly, how that connection is basically a blueprint for innovation. So first things first, let's start with a name everyone recognizes. When you hear the word Musk today, you're pretty much thinking of one guy and the massive companies he's built. I mean, his career has been this whirlwind of huge, high-stakes ventures. It all kicked off back in '95 with Zip2, which was like an early internet city guide. Then came X.com, which, eventually morphed into the payment giant PayPal. But after that, he went for the moonshots. Literally. SpaceX to reach for the stars, Tesla to completely change how we drive, and then, most recently, buying Twitter to bring back his original vision for an everything app, X. So when he sold his first company, Zip2, he netted $22 million. Now, for most people, that's a life-changing amount of money, right? But for Musk, it was really just the beginning. The truly interesting part is what he did next. Because just a few years later, when eBay bought PayPal, Musk was the largest shareholder. He walked away with $176 million. And this wasn't just a payday. This was the seed money, the capital for his seemingly impossible dreams of SpaceX and Tesla. But you know what? It's not what he built that's the core of our story today. It's how he thought about building. And that right there brings us to the engine behind all this innovation. It's a mental model, a way of thinking, called first principles thinking. It's the framework that let him walk into industries with 100-year-old companies and just completely turn them upside down. In his own words, it's all about reasoning from first principles rather than by analogy. Okay, so what does that even mean? Well, reasoning by analogy is just copying what's been done before, maybe making a few small tweaks. First principles thinking is the exact opposite. It's about ignoring the past and starting from scratch. So in practice, it means you break a problem down to its most basic, undeniable truths. You strip away every assumption, all the, well, this is how we've always done it stuff, until you're left with just the raw, fundamental components. Only then do you start building your solution back up. Let's look at a real-world example, SpaceX. Musk wanted to go to Mars, but buying a rocket was just impossibly expensive. That's thinking by analogy, just buying the finished product. Instead, he asked a first principles question. He asked, hold on, what is a rocket actually made of? And what he found was that the raw materials, aerospace-grade aluminum, titanium, copper, carbon fiber, they only cost about 2% of the final price. The conclusion was radical. Why not just buy the materials and build the rocket yourself? And that's exactly what he did, and ended up cutting launch costs by a factor of 10. Think of it like this. You have a motorboat, a tank, and a bicycle. They seem totally unrelated, right? But if you deconstruct them, break them down to their first principles, a motor and skis, metal treads, handlebars and a seat, you can then reconstruct those parts into something new and brilliant, a snowmobile. You ignore the original thing to innovate on what it's supposed to do. And this brings us to the twist in our story. Because, get this, a century before Elon Musk was deconstructing rockets, chemists were deconstructing something way more primal. All because of the original Musk. Yup, the innovator we all know, and the scent that was once the most prized fragrance in the entire world. Get ready, because this is where our two stories are about to collide. For centuries, Musk wasn't a person. It was this powerful animalistic scent that came from the musk deer. It was the absolute foundational base note in perfumery. It gave fragrances depth, sensuality, and that amazing staying power. And its value was just astonishing. This wasn't just a simple luxury. Natural musk was one of the most expensive commodities on Earth, literally worth twice its weight in gold. But this incredible value came at a terrible, terrible cost. To get the musk, you had to kill the deer. And for centuries, they were hunted relentlessly. Finally, in 1979, the species was given international protection, and using natural musk was pretty much banned. This sent the entire perfume industry into a crisis. How on earth could they recreate their most essential ingredient? Well, with the natural source gone, they had to innovate. There was no other choice. Perfumers had to go back to the drawing board and invent a totally new way forward, kicking off this incredible era of chemical synthesis. And here's the parallel. It's just like the rocket problem. The perfumers had a huge challenge. The old way, the analogy-based solution of getting musk from a deer, it was gone. It was no longer an option, so they turned to first principles. They started asking, what is this scent fundamentally? What are its core chemical components? And the breakthrough came, as it so often does, completely by accident. In 1888, a chemist named Albert Bauer wasn't even trying to make perfume. He was working on new explosives. But he stumbled upon a molecule that had this strikingly similar scent to natural musk. This was the birth of synthetic, or nitro musks. It was the very first step in deconstructing the scent itself. And that one accident kicked off a whole century of innovation. From Bauer's first synthetic nitro musks, chemists then developed more stable and cheaper polycyclic musks in the 1950s. And today? Today, they use advanced molecular modeling to design entirely new scent molecules from the ground up. Each generation broke the problem down even further to build a better, more elegant solution. So here we are. We have our two stories, the tech titan and the ancient scent. Two wildly different legacies, but they share the same name and, way more importantly, the same fundamental approach to solving impossible problems. This is the common thread, right here. One Musk deconstructed a physical object, a rocket, all the way down to its raw materials. The legacy of the other Musk inspired chemists to deconstruct a biological scent all the way down to its molecular structure. In both cases, they completely ignored the existing form, the finished rocket, the deer, to innovate on the fundamental function, creating affordable spaceflight and creating an accessible, sustainable fragrance. So ultimately, both legacies of the name Musk are really just incredible stories about first principles thinking. They show us the amazing things that can happen when we refuse to accept that the way things are is the way they have to be. And that leaves us with a final, kind of provocative thought. We've seen suitcases get wheels, rockets built from scratch, scents born in a lab. So what part of our own world are we just accepting by analogy? What everyday idea, if we just broke it down to its most basic truths, is just waiting for someone to come along and rebuild it into something completely revolutionary?